I stood at the base of Michelangelo's David in sheer awe. I ran my hands along the ancient stones that line the inside of the Colosseum in Rome. I met and conversed with people that opened my eyes to such diverse cultures and perspectives. But it's people like Bill and Elise here who encourage us to experience these things, to step outside of our comfort zones and face some hardships, because that's when we find value in story. Without embracing our hardships, our ambition has no value. Ambition is something I've truly learned through my friends. It's friends that have strengthened my faith that has gotten me where I am today. My friends have challenged me to live a life for greater meaning. They've challenged me to risk, because the greatest stories aren't the ones when you're safe as possible. The best stories are when you might be terrified, you might be ridiculed, or you might even face death. My friends have encouraged me to write my story with meaning, to put others before myself, and to put my skills to the test. I did a road trip with my roommate across the country to Colorado and Utah to backpack this past spring, where we saw some incredible sights. There were some hardships, but there was also rewards. We took 2 showers over those 10 days, in case you were wondering. I've traveled to Europe twice with one of my best friends, who also happens to be the Assistant Dean of Students, Andy McAllister. We had just some amazing experiences on those trips. Last semester, my roommates and I made a pact that whatever we do in life, we will never do it mediocre. And that's a pact that I hope everyone in the room can live up to. I can't get to the resolution of the story yet because, frankly, our stories don't quite end after we finish this delicious cheesecake in front of us. But what I can say is that I know I only have a couple of short weeks left here at Lindsey, and I will walk away knowing that I can write a better story. I've been given better insight for future decisions. I've been given better tools to use down the road when I surely will need them. I've met and faced obstacles and ridicule that show me what I'm made of and that have strengthened my faith. I've had conversations with and met people that have truly changed me for the better and shaped me into the person I am today, all of which has given me a pen full of ink ready to write a true page-turner of the story.
Thank you, Kelly and Stephen, for those inspiring words. Weren't they terrific? Unbelievable. And the choir, Ron, by the way, that's my favorite song they sang, the one you wanted them to sing. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Elise and I took a trip to Seattle and Anchorage with them, and just tears would roll down our face every time they'd sing that song. I was so pleased to hear them do it. Thank you all again. That was so, so touching. I remember at last year's Founders Day that I mentioned our college, Lindsey Wilson, was about to face a defining moment in its history. Do you remember that? A defining moment in its history. Now that may have sounded a little dramatic at the time, but I truly believe that it was. There were only 70 days remaining in our Changing Lives campaign, and we were $809,676 short of our campaign goal. We needed to raise $11,566.80 every single day on average, including Saturdays and Sundays, to reach our $53 million goal. That was a lot of money to try to bring in 70 days, and there was no low-hanging fruit left. Some of you wrote a check for $12,000 and a note that said one less day. Some of you finalized an estate commitment, and others simply gave what you could. Well, you need to know that in this defining moment in the history of the college, we did not raise $809,000. We raised much more. In fact, in that last 70 days, we raised almost $3.7 million, or 4.5 times more than my challenge to you that evening, bringing our campaign total to nearly $56 million. Instead of the $11,566 that we needed to average for 70 consecutive days, instead you gave and you gave and you gave $52,000 $379.64 day after day after day after day for 70 consecutive days. Over $52,000 a day.
It sounds biblical.
Jim said it sounds biblical. It was clearly a defining moment in the life of this college, and you communicated loudly and clearly that your love, your passion, your commitment to this place and its people went far beyond my imagination. Rather than halting this momentum that we've had, you inspired me and this team, our trustees, our faculty, our staff, our students, our donors, to keep our collective foot on the accelerator as we dream new dreams for this incredible place. To keep our collective foot on the accelerator as we dream new dreams for this incredible place. Now, with all of this success and the remarkable growth that your college has experienced, there is still danger lurking around the corner. Moody's, a financial rating service, has forecasted that 25% of our private colleges and universities in the next 25 years will go out of business. And that the colleges that are most vulnerable are the low endowment, tuition-driven institutions in the rural parts of the country. Hear that again. Low endowment, tuition-driven in the rural parts of the country. In other words, places on the surface that appear to be just like Lindsey Wilson College. You know, that may sound far-fetched at first glance, but then I'm not so sure. Less than 2 weeks ago, I received an email that Lambeth University, a sister United Methodist college in Jackson, Tennessee, with a community of roughly 100,000 people, would be closing after being open for 168 years, since 1843. Listen to that. Since 1843. Lambeth was open during the Civil War. It survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression, but it will now close on June 30th, 2011. Lambeth confronted a defining moment in its history, and yet not enough people stepped up. It lost its accreditation, all federal funding, and in roughly 60 days, the doors will close. We've seen similar things happen at Sue Bennett College in London, Kentucky, in Lee's College in Jackson, Kentucky. And if Moody's is correct, it will become much more prevalent in the future. So what does all of this have to do with Lindsey Wilson College? I mean, this place is on a roll. You are cooking with grease, Lucky. And you know what? We are. We are having so much fun. And I know that we are changing lives here, and I know that we're making a difference here. But I don't want to hit a pothole and then have Roger Drake tell me how deep the pothole was. Let's look ahead and find a way to swerve and miss that pothole rather than figuring out how deep it was after we break an axle. You heard Jim Fugit mention tonight, and you've heard me mention before, the goal of $100 million for the endowment fund. You know, that sounds obscene for a place like Lindsey Wilson College to have $100 million in its endowment. Why is it, Lucky and Fugit, that is so important? Let me tell you why. 72% of our students receive the federal Pell Grant. Stop and think about that. 72% receive the federal Pell Grant. That's reserved for the lowest income students. Our federal government is broke. The Commonwealth of Kentucky is out of money. And our leaders are strongly considering reducing financial aid to needy students. If the recommendations from the House of Representatives had been adopted, our students would have lost $2 million. $2 million. That's why we need to grow our endowment, Jim, to protect our students from future reductions from the federal government. We can no longer rely on Uncle Sam. We can't depend on the federal government to continue to fund that federal Pell Grant. You know, this work that we do is so important. It is so important, not only to the individuals that we serve, but I believe to the future of this country. I believe our country is at a defining moment in its history where we can either try to balance our federal budgets on the backs of our students by slashing our support of education across all levels and essentially eating our seed corn, or we can decide to invest in our future, in our people, in our students, to compete in a global economy. In 2002, the United States ranked second, only behind Norway, in the percentage of the population with a bachelor's degree. 2002, we were second. By 2007, this country had fallen to seventh. And by 2020, the USA is projected to be 19th among industrialized countries. In 18 years, we're talking about going from second to 19th. We're talking about dropping 17 spaces in 18 years' times. I believe that this is our modern day Sputnik moment. And I believe a matter of national security that we find a way to fund student aid and graduate our students ready to compete with the rest of the world. We always seem to have enough money for wars, but there's nothing more powerful to break the chains of ignorance, to alter the direction of a family than an education. Thank you. I am a first-generation college student, a recipient of the Pell Grant. My mother just retired as a housekeeper. I have a doctorate. We have 3 daughters that will graduate. Don't cry. The oldest went to Princeton, Center, Transylvania. To go from a housekeeper to a doctorate and a daughter at Princeton, that's the power of an education. That's where you break the chains of ignorance, is through investing in our students. I was sharing with my board recently that I'm thinking of changing the name of the college to Lindsey Wilson College and Penal Institution because we spend about $28,000 a year on a prisoner versus about $4,000 a year on a college student. Think about that. $28,000 on a prisoner, $4,000 on a college student. It is so important that we miss that pothole and that we invest in our endowment to protect our precious students.